There's a moment in every career when you realize the path you're on isn't accidental, it's intentional. My guest today didn't stumble into the FBI. He made a calculated decision early on. He changed his college major to accounting for one reason, and that was to become an FBI agent. That choice set him on a path that would take him far beyond spreadsheets and classrooms and into the aftermath of some of the most consequential attacks in modern American history, including the Oklahoma City bombing and the Atlantic Olympic bombing, just to name a few. As an FBI special agent, he operated in moments where uncertainty was the norm, information was incomplete, and the margin of error was razor thin. This wasn't about heroics or headlines. It was about discipline, teamwork, and quiet professionalism when the stakes couldn't be any higher. That man is Barry Black. Today, after a career spent responding to national crisis, Barry is passing those hard-earned lessons forward as a professor at the University of Central Oklahoma, training the next generation of forensic scientists. This conversation isn't about bombs or investigations. It's about making deliberate choices, seizing opportunity, and maintaining professionalism over a lifetime of service. I'm your host, Jay Hinsey, and this is Under the Crab. Roll Tide. How about, are you Roll Tide?
Yeah, I went to school in Tuscaloosa,
Yeah.
so yeah,
I
this
figured you
last
still
game
were.
was a little disappointment, but at least we made it to the quarterfinals.
Yeah. I figure once, always, Alabama, you just don't leave, right?
No, it's a religion. You living in Huntsville, you've probably had to pick Alabama
Yeah.
or Auburn, right? So,
And with my life, like I had to decide
yep,
if
that's
I
the
was
way it
a
is from childhood
Roll Tide
on. You're
or War Eagle. I definitely, most of the people I'm around here now, you'll get I'll find occasional where they're War Eagle. They don't even want to hear it. It's like, it's crazy how militant people are about football.
militant's a strong word, but impassioned is what we say.
Okay, impassioned. That sounds a little bit better. They are. I'm telling you, they don't even want to. They don't want to give an inch when it comes to where you went. But I knew you grew up in Alabama, and I watched the game the other day. It was sad, but at least we got pretty far.
Yeah, not the one to watch, but yeah, that was all right. We got farther than I thought.
Yeah.
Bear Bryant died my freshman year. I went to his funeral.
Wow.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. He's actually buried just across the little road from my family's plot there. So yeah,
Okay.
Joe Namath, Bart Starr, all the big names were there. It was
Wow.
quite a deal. Yeah,
Right. Well, other historical parts of your life, and we're going to get into that today, all the historical things that happened while you were an FBI agent and bomb technician. But I just want to briefly introduce you to our audience. And I know you've been interviewed many times before, and I actually had you on our FBI podcast that I did for our bomb technician community, but I was very limited where I could put that. So this will be for all to see and hear. And so I'm excited about getting to talk to you again. It's been a little bit since we did our interview a couple years ago. And I just recently we had the 30th year anniversary. I'm assuming you went back to Oklahoma City for that.
yeah. I don't go to that memorial every year. It's pretty sad. But the big ones, 20, 25, 30, I go to just to see everybody again, and 30 years is a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, that's I started my law enforcement career in 1995. And so it was March 13th, 1995, and less than or about a month later is when that happened. So let me just introduce you to our audience here. This is Barry Black. He is a retired FBI special agent, bomb technician, accountant, sniper, and we'll talk a little bit about your book as well. But you earned your bachelor's of science in accounting degree from the University of Alabama, a big Alabama fan. And You joined the FBI in 1988. You were assigned to Oklahoma City Division, where you mainly investigated some pretty complex financial crimes, which you detail in your book. And you served as an FBI SWAT sniper, and you also became a bomb technician. And as I mentioned earlier, you were a part of some pretty historical, significant bombing events that have happened in this country, which we're going to talk about today. One of those, which was the Oklahoma City bombing back in April 19th, 1995. You were a huge part of that investigation, lead investigator for that. You responded to the Atlanta Centennial bombing in 1996. World Trade Center attacks you assisted in, 2000 bombing of the University of Oklahoma campus, bombing of a U.S. Air Force recruiting station, also conducted a complex undercover operation, which helped thwart the 2017 truck bomb attack of a major financial bank there in Oklahoma City, which I want to talk about today as well. You also supported some pretty technical cases throughout your career, which you detail in your book. And you've supported numerous national security events, special events, we call them, throughout your career. And you also have a U.S. patent as a co inventor of a specialized counter IED tool, which is pretty cool. Maybe we can talk about that today.
Sure. Yeah.
Did you ever think that would happen?
No, actually, hearing you say the things you just said, I didn't think any of it would happen.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. You were recognized and received a Master Police Instructor Award. You've been recognized as the Bureau as a Master Bomb Technician in 2014, as well as you were inducted into the Local Law Enforcement Hall of Fame. And you have other numerous awards from our local law enforcement as well as the military. Barry, it's I've worked with you a little bit throughout the years. I was in Arizona for a lot of that time, so I ran into you briefly. You came out for teaching a course out in Arizona once, but it's an honor and a pleasure to get it to see you again and get to interview you again on this channel.
Pleasure's mine, Jay. Yeah, we've known each other a while, different circumstances, but retirement's a good thing, right? We're both enjoying that. Looking back, that 31 years, it went so fast, and just the opportunities I was given uh, to do things I didn't know the FBI even did, and things just unfolded kind of right place, right time. And I missed the work. I had lunch with a trooper, a retired bomb tech today, and we were talking, war stories, and it's hard to let go of some of that part of it. I don't miss the well, they say don't miss the clowns, but I miss the circus kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I was, that was some of my interviews. We've talked about retirement and that you miss people that you worked with, that you put your life in their hands and those great stories and just the hard efforts, but you don't miss all the other nonsense that we have to deal with in law enforcement. So if you could just, there's so much like your book, which I just want to mention here real quick. It's called Hazardous Devices, a memoir of an FBI bomb technician, accountant, and sniper. That's an interesting title. I love it. A lot of people don't know that we do a lot of different things in the FBI, and some of our specialties we come in on and we work some of those things. But ultimately, a lot of us end up being bomb technicians or we get on SWAT and we do that for a lot of our career and it takes up a lot of time and energy and we develop our skill sets. And as you can see here with your career, you did some significant responded to some significant events throughout history here and your time at the FBI. So but with that you still had all your requirements, you still had cases that didn't involve bomb work, you had accounting cases which were, as I've read them through your book, they're pretty amazing. I couldn't keep up with some of them. I had to reread back just to stay on task with really what was occurring throughout those events. Did you
it
have
was
similar issues like that?
complicated.
Yeah.
Some of them were quite complicated, and then I think what a lot of people don't realize from watching all the shows on TV, all the FBI shows, which are awesome. I still watch them. I enjoy them. But things are not solved in 60 minutes. So I
No.
had some cases that were 5 years long. And
Man.
the FBI is really the only organization that can assign an agent with some expertise in accounting, in this case, to work a case for 3 or 4 or 5 years. and end up getting convictions, so it's very
Yeah.
satisfying in the end.
Yeah. Well, and we might have multiple cases racked up, on our docket. It's not just you have one case and that's it. I mean, when I was working, bank robberies and organized crime and child sex crimes and all, I had probably 30, 40 cases that I was responsible for that I had to maintain. Doing this in the accounting world, did you have similar things? Did you have a bunch of cases that you were responsible for?
Usually at least 25. And
Okay.
back, prior to the bombing in Oklahoma City, our office was in a mall. It's called 50 Penn Place. It's a very nice mall. We had the top 4 floors. But, yeah, I kept this before computers, of course, and, I had just a running checklist, a written list, because you had to post your cases every 30 days. You had to have something in each file every 30 days. So I was going through some stuff, in retirement, you shuffle through, and I found one of my lists of, it was 26 cases at the time. Yeah, different
Wow.
wire fraud, bank fraud,
That's a
embezzle,
lot.
it's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with, but that was the fun of it. If you got sort of burned out on one particular case, then you just shift gears, go to the next one. And
Right.
no, it kept you busy, but it was good.
Now, did you have to work sources as well and do all the extracurricular
And the
things that were
bane, yeah.
okay.
So, what's difficult, as you know, working reactive, there are true informants, people on the street that see things, and you can go back to that well time and time again. There aren't many, bank presidents that are recurring in the criminal world. So you came along during the time when they actually allowed you to have what they called cooperating witnesses.
Yeah.
So if you flipped somebody that would help you, and it's a one trick pony, it's the treasurer of some company or something, you could open them as a cooperating witness and at least get credit, because as you know, you would get dinged on your performance if you didn't
Right.
have a true, what the Bureau used to call an informant. So I got to see a lot of changes in the FBI, and that was one of them. Before, when you had to have true informants, they said, all right, we realize now we're doing a lot of banking cases and you're not having a traditional informant. So they created this cooperating witness widget that you could get a stat for. And really, you could do that in almost every case, because in financial cases, you need that thread to pull, and
Right.
somebody's got to point you in the right direction, and developing those sources, those interview skills become really important.
Yeah, that was paramount to have that right person that was kind of in the know or maybe even slightly a part of what was going on.
Yeah,
And,
slightly. Yeah,
you could pull them a little bit and help open up the case a little bit more,
sure.
you would say. But we all have to do it. I had to run sources as well. I had plus all the other stuff that we have to do. We have training that we have to attend. We have firearms. We have computer training. We have, the yearly requirements of legal that we had to
Right.
attend. So it's
Quarterly.
not
Yeah.
a quarterly. And so there it was not only that, but just all the things that came up, especially, as being a bomb technician or SWAT, you had stuff that would just come up over in the middle of the night that you had to break away and go deal with for calls. So it's a lot. And for as many years as you did that, that's pretty cool that you're still kicking around and you're running around and you look good and you have a lot to show for it. So good on you. And I think, being that's the great thing about being with the FBI is you get to do so many interesting, unique things all over the world. Like you've literally been all over the world and done so many different things and throughout the whole country.
A lot of opportunity, and you get what you put into it. I'm sure you knew some folks that would come and show up and punch the clock and go home. But if you want some challenges, they're out there. You have to go after them. You have to want them and pursue them. But the opportunities are there, and I found it very rewarding. As I said, some of the things I got to do, I didn't even know the bureau was involved in.
Right.
I didn't know we had bomb technicians.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Right.
got in '88, and terrorism and bombings, they were not as prevalent as they are now. And it wasn't until the fire at Waco in '93 when I met the first bomb tech. I was like, well, wait, I didn't even know we did that. He goes, oh yeah, we
Yeah.
certify everybody. I was like, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's opportunities that you may not even know about.
Yeah. Most people don't know that today. When I was running the bomb school before I retired, they had no idea that the FBI was responsible for that. And there's only one school. in the
Right.
entire country. So, well, real quick, just talk about your upbringing. Where did you grow up? What did that look like? Did you always want to be an FBI agent, or was that something that just kind of happened?
I grew up in a little town, suburb of Birmingham, Alabama, called Homewood. It's a great place, still a great town. And since I was about 10 years old, I wanted to be in the FBI. Some people want to be pilots or NBA players or whatever. I wanted to be an FBI agent. A lot of it was TV, movies, but I had a coach that Park League baseball coach that was an FBI agent.
Mm,
Great guy. His son was my age, so we kind of went up through the ranks together. He was always super helpful, just real squared away. It's fit right in with my image of what I saw on TV and in the movies. So I told him, "Hey, that's what I want to do," and he didn't blow me off. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's a great job." But as I got a little older, I would still call him, and he would patiently
wow.
answer my questions.
Yeah.
Until eventually he just handed me off to the recruiter. 'Cause I was in college at the time, and he said, "Well, obviously you're serious, so I'm going to put you in touch with the recruiter." And it was, that's how it started.
Yeah, so how long did it take once you like, it was I mean, I know there's a lot involved. I had to wait a certain amount of time. You have to have a degree, you have to have some experience. What did that experience look like for you?
So when my old coach put me in touch with a recruiter, again, very patient person, she said, "Look, you're way too young." All right, I was
Mm,
a freshman in college, and she said you have to be as you said, a 4-year degree, 3 years of work experience. Call me later, basically.
yeah.
So towards the end of that year, I called her back and I said, "All right, now what else could I be doing to heighten the probability of success? Getting in." And she said, "What are you studying?" I said, "Well, I'm in engineering. I'm finishing up my first year in engineering." And there was this long pause. And she said, "Well, is that really what you want to do? Because we're not hiring engineers." She said,
Mm,
we're hiring accountants and lawyers. And law school is another 3 years of school. But at the time, the FBI had an accounting exam that was loosely based on the AICPA exam. And she said, if you happen to get an accounting degree and can pass this test, we'll waive that 3-year work requirement and you could get in a
wow.
whole lot younger.
Yeah.
So I packed my bags, went to Tuscaloosa, which was the Better Business School, changed majors, ended up, and I saw her at the Accounting Society meetings. I said, "All right, I've changed majors. I'm still in." And she's like, "All right, call me when you're done." So I got out of school and told her, "Okay, I'm here. I'm ready." She goes, "Well, you're still too young. You got to be at least 23." So
What?
I had to eat. I reluctantly took a job as an accountant on the East Coast. And first thing I did was call the recruiter there in Norfolk. I was living in Virginia Beach, and said, "Hey, I'm here. This is kind of what I'd like to do." And they said, "Yeah, we'll let you know when the accounting exams are out again. They're not often because there weren't that many accountants at the time, but it was a written exam. So I took the test, got past that. By the time that came back, I was old enough. You could apply 6 months before your 23rd birthday. So then I was in the window and I took the written special agents test and then all the physical stuff, medical stuff, and that final panel interview, which is a lot different now. It was kind of brutal back then, now it's very structured and a little more user friendly than I think it used to be.
Did, I mean, not really wanting to be an accountant growing up, did it just kinda grow on you? Because I mean, you did that for a lot of your career throughout your career. Did it just something that continued to spark your interest, or was it a forced thing
Well,
that you just did to get in?
means to an end. You
Yeah,
know,
okay.
it was the quickest, most certain way for me to get the job I wanted. So, and once when I was working on the East Coast, it was interesting. It's problem solving, putting puzzles together. And, that's what we do with cases anyway. And once I got in the bureau, we're talking about, multi-million dollar, bankruptcy fraud or money laundering. I had a target one time and did have a true informant wearing a wire. And the guy said, "Well, they'll never figure out what we did." Well, we did. And we played that to the jury, and the jury didn't like hearing him say that very much. Untangling those relatively complicated cases was, I guess, mentally stimulating. But on the first floor were the reactive guys kicking in doors and arresting fugitives. And that was a little more like the movies. So, with the training, the accounting thing, they weren't really going to put me on a reactive squad. So my avenue into that was the SWAT team.
Okay. Well, I mean, you detailed some of those, cases in there. They were great. They were a good read, so, I thought they were exciting. I could have never done accounting. I had no
Sure,
desire
you could.
to know numbers, put them all together, but, there were some pretty intricate cases, and the travel that you got out of that was pretty amazing as well
Well,
for those.
and that it was good. It was great. Some of the international money laundering cases, as you know, the FBI doesn't really have any authority overseas. So we use these things called mutual legal assistance treaties through the embassies and our legal attaches. And you show up in some island nation, down in the Caribbean, and absolutely have to play by their rules. And I was in, I think it was Turks and Caicos one time. I thought I was going to go interview the commissioner of insurance, but it turned into a whole court thing. You had to go sit in the courtroom, and the judge came out with a powdered wig, and it was the full blown deal. I was there for 9 days for basically one interview, but yeah, it was good stuff. I was diving at night and going to court in the day, so it
Yeah,
was all good.
yeah, I forgot to mention that you were a pretty, you know, regular diver, I guess, everywhere you went. After reading through your book, I'm like, this reminds me of Forrest Gump. He got involved in everything. He was a part of some amazing things and didn't even realize it,
Yeah.
that he was in the middle of it. And I thought that was great. It was such a good read. But
Well,
so
thank you.
let's talk about your SWAT career. So how did that happen? How did you get involved in that? Was that just something that excited you and you got you away from the accounting side of the house?
Well, again, blame it on TV. Back when I was younger, there was a show called SWAT. You know,
Yep.
the music was on the radio. It was a pretty catchy. Today they've reincarnated now to the new version, but the coolest guys were the snipers. I was
Right.
like, all right, well, that would be something. I hunted as a kid, but I didn't do any competitive shooting or anything. But as you'll recall, when you're new in the FBI, you're assigned a training agent, and you're
Yes.
on probation for a year. Now it's 2 years, but for me, it was a year. And my training agent happened to be a national competitive shooter and the SWAT team leader, sniper team leader. So, we spent a lot of time together since I was his trainee, and he shot a lot to keep, his marksmanship up. So he said, why don't you just come with me? So every Wednesday we would go to the range and expend a few rounds. Got to be very good friends. And after a while, you can develop a skill. And he said, I think you'd be a good fit on the SWAT team. Have you ever thought about that? I'm like, well, yeah, I've thought about it, but I wasn't sure. And he goes, well, you got to be off probation. There's always one more thing to do. But when I wrapped up probation, he introduced me to the team leader, who was a former Green Beret, 2 Purple Hearts. He was a real deal, great, great guy. And they said, yeah, we'll have tryouts. And we did. I got on the team, did some really pretty amazing, kind of cool stuff as far as manhunts, fugitive arrest, the things that you do see on TV. And then Roy, my training agent, he said, well, why don't we look at sniper school? So he greased the skids for me, and I got into sniper school. It happened to be in January, which is not the ideal time to go lie in the mud, but we got through that and came out as a sniper. He and I were on a team together, one of 3 teams in this division. And first big call out was the Branch Davidian thing in Waco.
Yeah, that's yeah, 1993, right?
Yeah, 93.
So I just recently interviewed Jeremy Redmond, who was a sniper as well. Did you guys know each other out in
He
Oklahoma?
was
Okay,
he
good.
was in the division with me. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, he had a book as well and a great story of his SWAT time. The Waco incident, 1993. I remember that. I was just finishing up college. I hadn't started my police career, but tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that. And there's some significant happenings with that too, which I'd like to talk about.
yeah. So on a personal level, my wife and I had just gotten married. So this is in February of we were unpacking from our honeymoon, and we had home phones. Nobody really had a cell phone yet, so our home phone rang, and it was one of her bridesmaids, one of her best friends. I answered, and she said, "Hey, are you okay?" And I thought she was making the honeymoon joke. And I said, well, yeah, we're fine. We just got back. She goes, have you seen television? 4 agents got killed. Well, I hadn't seen the news. So I said, whose agents? What do you mean? So CNN was like the only news network then. So I flipped on CNN, and of course there was, ostensibly live coverage, but we did have pagers. If you're on a special team, you got a pager, which was about the size of a brick, but, pager went off and it was the SWAT call out. And, team leader said, rally in an hour. Okay. So we had to, go back and you load up. And my wife said, well, how does this work? I said, it'll be done before we cross the Red River into Texas. This isn't gonna stand. Of course, it turned into a 51-day thing. So that was the inauguration to marriage. Yeah.
Happy honeymoon.
Right. Yeah. Honeymoon's literally over. Yeah.
The honeymoon is over. Yeah, definitely. So you guys responded down there. What did that look like for the viewers?
You know, you have in your mind how things are going to go, and you train and you practice, and there's a plan. What we know now is the incident command system, or ICS, didn't really exist then. At least it wasn't codified. But unlike the movies, the FBI doesn't just take over. You know, there was another agency that was executing warrants and things went sideways, just horribly wrong. 4 agents were killed. And then there was basically a ceasefire where everybody could collect their dead. And in that lull, the President Clinton, who was new, and his attorney general, Janet Reno, said, you know what? FBI, you go fix it, which is how the Bureau got involved in Ruby Ridge and some other things. So, okay, we can do whatever the president says within bounds of the law. So we went down, we met in a hangar that was several miles away just for a situational report and update. And I remember the SRT, the ATS version of the SWAT team, special response team, they detailed an older guy, one of their team leaders, to brief us. And he still had his BDUs on, and he had taken a shotgun blast from an upper story window, which kind of brought the reality of this thing. I mean, his goggles were cracked. I'm quite vividly remember thinking, man, these guys are not
Real.
kidding around.
Yeah.
And he detailed the ferocity of the fire. It was coming from everywhere, right? So if you've ever seen the movies or documentaries, this was a huge compound in the middle of nowhere, dirt roads, and the intel was, along with the smaller caliber shoulder weapons, they had 50 caliber rifles. Well, that's an extensive standoff for a 50 cal. And most departments now have a Bearcat or some kind of armored vehicle, MRAP, something. We had Suburbans that would just be shredded by a 50 caliber rifle. So we borrowed some Bradley fighting vehicles from Fort Hood. That's where those, memorandum of understanding come in. We had
Yes.
relationships with the Army, and they let us borrow some Bradleys. And so we walked down on the safe side of the Bradleys to the intersection of these little roads. And on our secure radio net, we were told, all right, hold there. Basically they're going to surrender. Well, they didn't. And 51 days later, they burned the place down.
Jeez. Yeah, that was very tragic. And
For sure.
that's a long time to be away to keep your mind right. And you detail that in your book. So it's definitely a part of a good read of that. You mentioned earlier that you didn't even know the FBI had bomb techs. Is that where you were first introduced to the bomb technician community or a member of the SABT community?
Yep. April 19th of 93, the Davidians set 3 simultaneous fires inside that compound. And I remember it was windy, like a harsh prairie wind, and the thing just went up like a match. Later investigation showed they had soaked it with lantern fuel. I mean, it was going to burn. But the firefighters were reluctant to go down because of the weapons and whatnot. But they were there still putting the fire out when our team went down to secure the compound because it's a crime scene now. And a couple of men walked up that I didn't recognize. We're like, all right, now who are you? And one was Jim Norman, who ended up being my mentor as a bomb tech. And I said, what do you do? They go, well, we're bomb technicians. I said, for who? He goes, well, you know,
Was he in your division? Was he a
yes,
part of?
but he worked
Okay.
for counterintelligence. So he
Okay,
was
so you
behind the skiff, and I
yeah, you
never
never
saw him.
cross paths. Yeah,
I was in the white collar accountant room where nobody wanted to go. Yeah, I had never really met him, and he said, "No, we're FBI bomb techs. We're here in case there's unexploded ordnance or IEDs in the rubble." I thought, well, that makes sense. But tell me about the program. He goes, "Oh yeah, the FBI certifies all the non-military bomb techs in the country. Work with our state and local partners, work with the military, travel around the world, blow stuff up." I was like, "All right, how do you do that?
that
That
sounds
sounds."
good.
Yeah. And he goes, "Well," it reminded me what the recruiter said. Don't get your hopes up, because, well, there are about 200 in the world at any one time. So it's a pretty small group, but if you want to put your name in the hat, good luck basically. And over the time, in from 93 to 94, he and I became really good friends. He is a great guy. He's passed now, but he was just a fine man. And I got selected to go to Hazardous Devices School in 94.
94.
And so did the time there, and it was HDS was wholly, totally different than what you ran as far as just the upgrades. It was a couple of Quonset huts and a big
Yeah,
mobile field. That
I
was
was
it.
gonna say you were still in the Kwanzaa huts, right?
Quonset huts, and we were there when the pan was developed, so we were
Yeah.
using some very archaic tools. They were effective and as good as you had, but the pan was a exponential leap in technology,
Yeah, so for some of our guests, that's essentially it's a water cannon was developed. There was an accident that occurred
right?
at the campus, and that kind of came out of that tool, which has turned into many other tools, and we still use that. Unfortunately, bad things happen, and we get new tools or better
Corrective
tools,
action.
technology. But I wanna read a quick excerpt from your book that I thought was, and I knew this before, but after reading again, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. But you're out at the Branch Davidian area, and journalists are out there. I remember seeing all these people on TV, but one person that came to mind, and you detail it in your book. One morning, a college journalism student noticed a protester selling bumper stickers that read, "Ban guns, make the streets safer for a government takeover," and "A man with a gun is a citizen, a man without a gun is a subject." And during her interview, the man stated this standoff was only the beginning and people needed to prepare to defend themselves against governmental control. The reporter had no way to know that 24 months later, this man would commit the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in American history. She was interviewing Timothy McVeigh. You were out there and you had not yet become a bomb technician. And how ironic is it that eventually you became that and then you had to deal with this whole case? So, as now we're moving into that in 1995, April 19th, can you talk a little bit about that whole, because you were a fairly new bomb technician, right?
I had finished HDS 53 weeks before.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just just enough to know a little bit about
Yeah.
being a bomb technician,
Yeah.
right?
So, and ERT, the FBI's evidence response team, which I wish we had come up with CSI because everybody knows that acronym a little
Right.
better, but we call it ERT. That had just started. So I helped start the ERT part for all the post blast. We didn't get much at basic then, but so ERT was brand new, and I was brand new as a bomb tech. I was still on the SWAT team and still juggling about 27 collar cases. So we had a fugitive on one of my multi-million dollar white collar cases. And I thought he was out at Tinker Air Force Base, which was about 7 linear miles from downtown. And we were sitting, another operator and I were sitting waiting for this guy to come out. And I mean, the ground rattled, heard the sound. And the SWAT team trained a lot at Fort Sill, which is an artillery post. And I mean, at first I thought, well, was that 155, and then I'm like, well, wait, this is an Air Force base. They don't have artillery here. It just didn't compute, and then we heard on our secure car radio, something's happened downtown. They thought maybe an airplane crash or gas main explosion. Then my pager went off, and it was basically get downtown. I remember the ASAC, the Assistant Special Agent in charge. This was new. There had been the first Trade Center attack, but this was new. And he said, "Go do whatever it is you do." Those were the marching orders. I got down there just a little before 9:30. The detonation was at 9:02, and it was a federal building. Well, my wife was there.
Yeah.
She, I
Does
didn't know
she
where she
work in
was.
the building?
So she was a federal probation officer. They parked their personal vehicles, and the government vehicles were parked in the garage. But she worked in the federal courthouse, which was across the street. But it was damaged as well and had been evacuated. Was being evacuated. Nobody had cell phones, as I said, or they were not prevalent. So I did the post blast sweep. You do the whole 360, and I mean, there was walking wounded. There were people still trapped. Cars were burning. Yeah, it was apocalyptic. It was really like, post blast is one thing. This was something totally. This is about a 5,000 pound vehicle borne IED. But I asked one of the courtroom security guys, "Have you seen my wife?" He goes, "Oh, I saw her. She's fine." I was like, "Okay." Well, he told me later he had not. That he said, "You just look like you needed that little piece of, yeah." So sometime later, she paged me
Mm.
back into my own voicemail at our office, which was
Oh my
offsite.
gosh.
And she had left a message that said she was fine, that their whole office had relocated, but she had left the building at 9 o'clock, 2 minutes before
Wow.
detonation. Yeah, she left the west garage, drove literally past the truck and got to the I-35, which is about 2 blocks away, and the overpressure pushed her vehicle. The big construction holes when they're resurfacing a road. She thought she had fallen into one of those holes.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was with me at Waco and that one. So
And so I mean, you see it on TV, but what was it like in person responding to that?
it's absolute chaos. There's so much that is happening at once. The people that were trapped that could get out were doing what they could to get out. The ones that couldn't desperately wanted help. EMS, fire, were all doing their part. A perimeter was being set up by the locals, the county, the city, and the highway patrol. There's just so much that was happening, and you have to do your part and count on everybody else doing their part. So other than just basic first aid, there's nothing I could do for these
Right.
people. They were not in good shape. But the post blast part, if this were terrorism, and it was clear when I got there, this wasn't a plane crash or a gas main explosion. This was an LV. So that's going to be the FBI's jurisdiction. We don't take over. We're going to work with our partners, but it's ours. So you start doing that post blast part, surveying the scene. What resources will you need? Of course, we already had headquarters resources coming in from the explosives unit and the lab. Just coordinating all those bits and pieces, and the faster that can happen, the better things are going to be, because it started raining that night.
Mm.
Of course, for residue, that's not
That's bad.
ideal.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to my car. I had parked on the northwest corner of the building as close as I could get without hitting the debris field. So I parked up on the sidewalk. We didn't have the equipment we had later, so I was driving an Oldsmobile Calais, a tactical Oldsmobile Calais. Had no room for any gear. I had a little go bag in the trunk. So I went back to get my Gore-Tex, and my whole car was gone. And I remember thinking, man, there's got to be a memo or something coming if I got my car stolen. So turns out it had been towed to make room for a triage station. So I found it a few blocks away, got my Gore-Tex, and we worked through the night. But yeah, it's absolute mayhem. It's there's not really good words to describe the kind of chaos that ensues after something like that.
Yeah, another excerpt in your book, the magnitude of the investigation was staggering. 1,400 people assigned to this case generated more information in 32 months than the Unabomber investigation did in 18 years. The exhaustive global investigation consumed over 1 million man hours, recovered roughly 16,000 pieces of evidence, conducted more than 28,000 interviews, and covered 43,000 leads. No stone was left unturned. Every lead, no matter how remote, received critical consideration. I mean, that's pretty significant event that took a lot of your life and many, many other people's lives to follow up, to look into, to respond to leads, and then all along deal with the tragic event. that happened that killed many, many people. How has that been for you? I know you mentioned earlier you don't always go back to every anniversary, but the big ones you do. Is that something you still think about? Does it come to mind every now and then? How does that happen for you?
Yeah, it's hard not to. Over those 31 years, went to a number of these, well, the large scale ones and even the smaller where people are lost. But what's difficult, Jay, is when you know people. You know, that initially, as I said, I didn't know where my wife was for a while. And maybe before your time, you actually got a paper paycheck.
Yeah.
So every other Thursday, I was in that credit union on the third floor, I believe it was. And there were some young ladies there. They're about my age. So we would always chat when I was depositing my paycheck. Well, they were all killed.
Mm,
And, there was a Secret Service agent. Yeah, it's difficult. One of the city bomb techs, a good friend of mine, was in the building talking to a man that was trapped. And he goes, "Hey, just hold on. We're going to get a ladder and, span this chasm where the floors were gone." And while he's talking to the guy, more debris fell and killed that man. And he and I still talk. But yeah, these are things you don't forget. And they're tragic. So you got to, I teach at a university now, and I tell a lot of my students, you have to have some way to deal with that, faith, family, friends, something it's going to happen. If you're in this business, that's your job. You can't not go. There were only two FBI bomb technicians in the state at the time, as myself and Jim Norman. So you can't say, well, I knew some of these people, so I'm going to sit on the sidelines. You
right,
kind of stuff it down deep for a little while and soldier on and do what you got to do. But no, it's something you don't forget. It's just something you have to get your head around.
right. Well, 167 people, I believe, and over
168.
668 and over 600 plus injuries occurred during that time. Hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. Just a horrific event that happened. And I know as we move forward in your book, you talked about getting an opportunity to go work the Olympics to get away from all
Yeah.
that a little bit.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. What ended up happening during your time away?
So the bureau is a family, sometimes a dysfunctional family, but it is
Yes,
a family.
for sure.
And our group, as you know, was called the Critical Incident Response Group. It had changed names a time or two, but we all know each other pretty well. And I'd been working 6, 7 days a week, 12, 14-hour days since the bombing. And the Olympics were going to be in Atlanta, but because of the magnitude of the Olympics, they had events scattered in different places. So CERG called and said, "Look, we know you've been hitting it pretty hard for a year, kind of nonstop. We know your family's still in Birmingham. The soccer venue for the Olympics is going to be there as kind of a little break to get away from this major case. What do you think about going down and running a counter IED team at the soccer venue in Birmingham?" I was like, "You know what?
Great.
Yeah, sounds all right." So I went down. It was great. Got to see my folks and some of my buddies, and did the national special security event stuff for that venue at Legion Field. I was sitting out one evening with some of the Olympic officials, and the bartender came out. We were sitting outside, and he goes, "Hey, what about that bomb in Atlanta?" And I was like, "Dude, that's not even funny." And he goes, "No." So he flipped on the TV where I could see it, and I did have a cell phone by then. The phone was ringing about the time the news came on. They said, "Get to Atlanta," which was, well, about a 3-hour drive. So I left that night. And of course, just as my group was there for the Olympic venue in Birmingham, we had teams deployed at the Olympics. So the group that was working the Olympics in Atlanta were dedicated to the post blast at Centennial Park. And I and my guys kind of backfilled the rest of the venues until closing ceremonies. But yeah, it was something. You leave one and go straight to another
Right to
was
another one.
kind of crazy.
And that ended up being Eric Rudolph, who was on the run for several years,
Yeah.
and he was finally captured. And we actually, I think you knew this, but we actually had seized his Nissan pickup, and it's actually at HDS in one of the training sites there for people to see.
Yeah, no, that's great. He actually killed a police officer in Birmingham too, so it was a multi-state bombing spree, and obviously was caught in North Carolina, I won't say 5 years later. Again, that was another huge case. The FBI manages those large investigations really, really well.
Yeah,
That's something the Bureau does quite well.
yeah. So let's move forward to the 2000s, and been a bomb tech for a little while, and then in 2005, I believe it was called the Sooner bomb. Was that
Right.
what it was
Yeah.
called? Yeah, an explosion happened at OU, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So, during that time frame, in 2000, 2005, terrorism was on, an uptick. After 9/11, transportation nodes had been hardened, so it's gonna be harder to get an IED in a train station or an airport or an aircraft. So our intel was, terrorists were gonna push to concerts and ball games, other public venues, which we saw happen in Africa and some other places. So I was sitting in this chair, literally where I am right now, and one of the highway patrol troopers called me and said, "There's been a bombing at OU, which is about 60 miles from me, and you need to get down here. Something's wrong." As you know, the most common IED in the US is a pipe bomb with low explosive. From inside the stadium, and this is the quality of training and the caliber of people that are bomb techs. They said we could tell from the brisance, the crack, this was high explosive. This isn't normal. So I was already en route by the time our office did their whole administrative thing and deployed me. I was already about halfway down there. And yeah, it was pretty grisly. The bomber was just gone from about the hips up. He was scattered in pieces across the north oval, just outside the stadium, and the team had already disrupted a backpack that was at his feet. But we didn't find the normal IED leftovers, the components, the wiring, the bits of power sources. So something wasn't adding up then.
And no other injuries at the time, right? No one
Well,
else got
one guy
injured?
got knocked over from
Okay.
that pressure wave, but yeah, he was not yet in a crowd. The crowds at that stadium back then, it was called halftime pass out. You could get a pass to get out of the stadium and buy a t-shirt or a beverage or whatever might be your choice. So within minutes, there would have been about 20,000 people milling around in this giant concrete box under a parking garage. So yeah. So anyway, the detonation occurred just before halftime. He was the only fatality. I mean, windows were broken. It was quite a deal. But the oddity was the standard post blast materials just weren't there. So we set up a command post in the stadium, and we recovered a wallet from what was left of him, and in it were two different IDs, same name. One was a OU ID, one was a state driver's license. So we had DPS run the state ID and OU police run the OU ID. Turns out he's a real guy. It's a true name. He was in this kind of engineering fraternity. So we went over to that fraternity house and learned that he had just sort of moved out and had an apartment on the other side of town. So we had two scenes to search. So early the next morning on a Sunday morning, myself, George Malden, and another Norman OU bomb tech, we made entry into his apartment looking for other bad guys, other IDs, booby traps, the things you do. And I remember when we went in there, it smelled like a dentist's office. It was this very strange, very chemically smell. And we did a little quick sweep and quick peek into his bedroom. I saw a bottle of hydrogen peroxide, a crock pot with white powdery residue,
Not good.
and like a Ziploc container, a hard container, like a sandwich box with about a pound or a kilo of this crystalline substance. Well, we had just finished maybe 6 months before. uh, Kirk Yeager, Dr. Yeager, the preeminent peroxide explosive expert, had just told us there's this new explosive, this peroxide based explosive made with hydrogen peroxide and acid. We found a bottle of acid as well. So it wasn't even sunup. And I went to the boss, the SAC, and I said, I think this is something we've not seen before. because TATP had never been used as a main charge in the US before. And he goes, well, what do you think it is? I said, well, I think it's this new stuff called tristone triperoxide, and we need to fly in these two chemists. And he was kind of incredulous. He was like, yeah, really? I said, that's what I think. He goes,
I'm
well,
not going in there.
and there were no tools then. Now we
Right,
have some
yeah.
tools to assess it, but
Yeah,
there
it's
was nothing. The
dangerous.
SOP at the time was call the lab, and they'll fly out people that have the technology. So in typical bureau parlance, he goes, "Well, you make your recommendation," which is bureau speak for if you're wrong, you're going to
Yeah.
Montana or something. So I said, "Well, here's what we need to do. You need to call the aviation unit, get a plane ready. I'll call the chemist, Dr. Yeager, and one of his other compatriots, and that is the national plan as it existed then." So they came out. It was a laser-based spectrometer, and they said, "Yeah, this is like 99% pure TATP." So we countercharged the bulk, took some for testing. Yeah, it wasn't terrorism. It had all the hallmarks. It was a sporting event with this terrorist type explosive, but he was just kind of a misguided guy. They had the National Merit Scholarship Program at that game. He had just lost his scholarship, had a little trouble getting dates, kind of, bad way to go.
Well, I remember I went through bomb school in 2001, and, that was a very significant event, TAT event that I
Absolutely.
remember. It changed a lot of how we do things, and having Dr. Yeager, on our side was good to have,
Yeah,
and
he's
other
quite a
members
character.
of the lab. Yeah, definitely. So let's move into, I think, Fight Club or Bank First. What was that? What do we call that? Because we all, if the audience doesn't know, the bureau has interesting names for bombing cases or just investigation cases. What was that case called?
So the Oklahoma City bombing was Oak Bomb for Oklahoma City bombing. Cent Bomb, Centennial bombing was the Olympics for Centennial Park. Pent Bomb was the Pentagon Trade Center bombing. This was called Operation Mischief Mayhem,
Hmm,
which is straight out of the movie Fight Club.
that's right. Okay, awesome. So can you talk a little bit about that? How that occurred? How you were involved in that?
Yeah, again, it was sort of an unlikely scenario, but I had arrested and convicted a guy for threatening to bomb a police station. Sitting at the office, got a call from the Norman police. They said, hey, we just got a bomb threat, telephonic bomb threat. It's a federal felony. It falls under our jurisdiction. I said, all right. And the officer said, well, we know who did it. They're like, what do you mean? He goes, well, he told us his name and we know him. He's a fugitive. I said, well, you've already got a warrant. Yeah. Well, why don't you just go pick him up? What do you need us for? He goes, well, we traced the call to Tulsa, which is 100 miles away. And we just thought maybe it'd be faster if you guys could do it. Well, the federal felony part. I said, yeah, well, yeah, we can do that. So we had a joint terrorism task force in Tulsa with Tulsa PD on it because they're going to be best able to go scoop this guy up. I traced the call. He was at grandma's house. They show up. He flees and goes out the back door. There's a foot chase. Of course, he gets caught. Not going to outrun the police. Goes to prison for threatening to bomb the police station. Gets out. Then he violates the conditions of his probation. Of course. So while he's a fugitive, the marshals are looking for him because now he's a fugitive from probation. He meets this guy named Jerry Drake Varnell. 3 names. You got to have 3 names.
You gotta have three names.
So Jerry Drake Varnell says, I want to create this thing like Fight Club where we reset the debt clock. The government's bad, capitalism's bad, whatever is bad. And I want to blow up the Eccles building, the Federal Reserve building in Washington, D.C. So this goes on for some time. My former convict gets roped back up and he decides while he's sitting in jail, maybe I should tell somebody. Well, as you know, people in jail will say a lot of stuff just to try to get out. So I didn't even know about him once he got arrested again. But JTTF got the call and his attorney had called DOJ, Department of Justice in Washington. DOJ called us because this is where venue would lie. And some JTTF agents went out and talked to my old convict. And they came back, it was the bomb tech, and they said, hey, this guy's saying these things. Does this even make sense? I said, what is his name? And, oh, yeah, you convicted him before. I was like, okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about. So this other guy, Varnell, what is he saying? And he gave me the details, and it was all quite valid. It was, sometimes you get crazy stuff which just can't happen. But I said, yeah, this is viable, but we need more information. So they continued to talk to my old guy who was talking to Varnell, and it got a little too close and a little too dangerous. So we introduced an undercover agent who, didn't. They're very good at undercover, but they're not bomb techs. So he and I met. We were friends from before, and I said, all right, tell him this. Tell him you're an apprentice to a commercial blaster in like West Virginia or someplace. And the guy that you work for hates the government, just like Varnell, and he's been stealing commercial explosives, but he doesn't have the backbone to pull the trigger. So I can probably talk him into giving you these commercial explosives, because what we didn't want was Varnell to make his own, because he said he had and knew about
Right.
explosives, knew about electronics. So to fast forward, Varnell thought, yeah, I'd rather use commercial explosives than make my own, because maybe those wouldn't work or whatever. And so we, working with Dr. Yeager, provided what he thought was 1,000 pounds of ANFO, which was his explosive of choice. He invoked McVeigh's name, and he said, "I want 1,000-pound bomb like McVeigh, but I won't mind to detonate with a cell phone." And he had said he had some prowess with electronics, so it was going to be a problem because he wanted to make the bomb himself.
Yeah.
So. We've had other cases, Dallas, for instance, where the terrorist just wanted a bomb. So Undercover provided him with a bomb, and he just wanted to pull the trigger. But this guy wanted to make it. Well, so that's a wrinkle, you know.
Yeah.
I told the undercover agent, I said, look, tell him the reason you're here from West Virginia is your girlfriend's grandma died, and she's got a storage facility out in the country somewhere, and that you can kind of hide out there, make the device, because you don't want to build 1,000-pound bomb into your own place. So we had that teched up, CCTV, the whole
Really?
9 yards. Went and
So you
bought
could
some
see
old.
him show up and
Yeah, so we did. He shows up. The UCA shows up, and I had our office in West Virginia send me a couple of fish house bags from a local restaurant in Wheeling, West Virginia, and I'd wrapped up the detonators in the bags from just to perpetuate that undercover story. But yeah, Varnell cut open the first bag of ANFO, and he goes, "I love the smell of diesel." And then he opened an ammo can, which we had provided the dynamite, and he goes, "Oh, this is the good stuff." These incredibly incriminating statements. And I'm sitting at the emergency operations center thinking, surely this guy's not going to build 1,000-pound bomb, drive it into Oklahoma City, 4 blocks from the Murrah building. But he kept putting it together, and finally was like finishing it up. I thought, well, I guess he is. So I'd rented a room at the Skirvin Hotel, which is across the street from the Target Bank, where I could see all the avenues of ingress. And we had Night Stalker up, a FBI surveillance aircraft, static surveillance and rolling surveillance. And we had the Highway Patrol in our EOC. We didn't want him to get stopped for not using a turn signal or something, because
right.
it's hard to hide 1,000-pound bomb. And, so everybody was on board. And sure enough, the aircraft called him out every mile, and he pulled down the street. He was going to park it in like an underground parking garage off an alley. But when he turned, a security guard in like a Fiesta or some little tiny little car blocked the alley. Well, so he kept heading south. Well, when he decided he wasn't going to bomb the Eccles building in Washington, he then said the Dallas IRS building. Well, I-35, which takes you to Dallas, was just like 2 blocks away. So we're thinking, all right, is he going to go to Dallas now then and abort
Wow.
this one?
So he's changed targets.
He had changed targets from Washington to Dallas to here, but then when his avenue was blocked, I was a little concerned he was just going to change to Dallas. But he made the block. The security guard, which was just a random occurrence, had already left. He pulled in the alley, and I watched him walk out to the getaway car. And he wanted to see it and feel it detonate. So he had picked a bus station a few blocks away, and I had written the firing instructions, because the undercover agent said, "All right, here are the explosives. Here's the time and power unit that you wanted. My guy built it. Here are the instructions on how to work it." Well, I'd assembled that and written the instructions. So he was in the the undercover agent's getaway car, which had West Virginia plates and, the whole bit is a pickup truck. And so it had been teched up as well with CCTV, and he dials the code to detonate it. Doesn't work. So he pulls out a smoke, looks at his phone. They're having a conversation. Our guy said, "Did you do it right?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, I know I did it right." Well, okay. So he tries it again,
Dial it again.
failure,
Wow.
dialed it a third time. Well, what he didn't know, he wasn't dialing the bomb. He was dialing my cell phone. So by letting him hit it 3 times, we showed intent.
Yeah, great evidence. Yeah.
And on the third time, SWAT team jerked him out the window, and now he's in jail for the next quarter
Yeah.
century.
Oh, that's great. What a great case.
It was a
That's
great case.
awesome. Yeah. It's good when, we all work together. That's what I love about law enforcement. It's not who pushes people aside. Like, we relied on everybody,
Absolutely.
especially being a bomb tech, we relied on all our squads just as you did to go take care of business. That's one thing I
One
miss.
Yeah, oh, for sure. One story associated with that. So the Skirman is a beautiful hotel. Is rumored to be haunted. I mean, it's been there for a long, long time. It's an old hotel, and it's right downtown. So they had security, an off-duty officer there. Well, this guy was security conscious, and I didn't know when I had picked that as our little command post. They had an off-duty officer there. Well, he parked his car right in front. So there's a marked unit
Oh,
right, I mean, right in front. There's no way Farnell could have missed it. And of course, the whole thing was kind of undercover, basically. So I went to the officer. I said, "Look, here's the thing. I'm with the FBI. We're working a sensitive matter. Would you mind parking around back?" He goes, "No." He said, they like it, the high profile out front. I said, "Well, this would just be for a little while. Really, would you mind just moving it, around?" He goes, "Dude, no, I'm not." Well, the chief was in our EOC. So I called back to the Emergency Operations Center. I said, "I got to talk to the chief." He's a National Academy guy, good guy. I said, "Hey, we got a little problem." He told him. He goes, "What's the unit number?" So I gave him the number on the back of the car, and I mean, I hadn't hung up. My guy was out. "Where do you want my car boost?" Yeah, sometimes it's you need a little help, from the
yeah,
brass, but it
yeah.
all works out.
Great. That's funny. It's who you know too. Like, you just get stuff done.
And the
It's
National
good.
Academy is a wonderful avenue to get to
Yeah.
know, the higher ups and stuff. So no, it all worked out great. And that was the beautiful thing about, your career and mine is you get to meet so many people,
Oh, yeah.
military, law enforcement, across the board. It's the caliber of people you get to work with.
Yeah. And a lot of them I'm still in contact with, which is great. I just, I cherish the time that we had, and it was, just a great experience for myself. Okay, well, let's talk about your book. So, The Hazardous Devices: Memoir of an FBI Bomb Technician, Accountant, and Sniper. Had you always planned to write a book after all this, or is this just something that you just decided this was important to do?
So having wanted to be in the FBI since I was little, one of my very, very best friends, Marianne Renna, she on my baseball team, it wasn't a secret, that's what I wanted to do. Well, so many dreams kind of just fall by the wayside. But when I got my letter to go to Quantico, to the academy, she said, "Look, I know you too well. You're going to forget most of this because, you're just not that bright. So you need to start writing things down." And I did. I cleaning out this office. I found my little notebook from Quantico, about the daily routine. And I just kept notes when I would fly back from these kind of far flung places. I would just tap out kind of what we were doing while we were there. Cause, frankly, I would forget. And in retirement, I thought, my son one day may want this, or if he doesn't, his kids, So I put it together, just a loose compilation of stories, and then I didn't want to self-publish because I'm not a writer, and I was afraid if I self-published, it would be horrible because there's nobody to check it.
Right.
So I started kind of looking into how you get a book published. Well, that's pretty hard, apparently.
Yeah.
It's
Not easy.
I stuck it in a drawer and thought, maybe that's far enough. At least it's put together. And I got an email one evening, unsolicited email from a publisher that said, "Hey, we've been kind of following your scholastic career up at the University of Central Oklahoma. The Forensic Science Institute, it's the top rated school of its kind in the country. It's a
Hmm.
lot of former Bureau guys, people, men and women, really amazing group of people. And I said, would you be interested in writing a textbook, a forensic science textbook? I said, well, I've never thought about that. I'm retired. That's going to be a lot of work. I'm really pretty lazy, but I have this compilation of stories from 31 years in the FBI. They're like, really? Well, send us a couple of those. So I did. And then I heard nothing. I thought, well, okay. But pretty soon they said, do you have any more? Like, well, yeah, I've got, so they said, send us more. Time goes by and they said, when could you finish it? I said, well, it's done. It's about as good as I can make it. I don't know what I'm doing, but it's, as far as I know, it's done. I said, send it to us. And about 30 days later, they said, we'd like to publish it. We'll send you a contract. And it was a God thing. It fell in my lap, and it was a lot of fun to do. And it's the trooper I had lunch with today. He already got a copy. He wanted me. It's silly to say he wanted me to sign it for him. So
Yeah.
that's the first time I'd ever done that. It was this afternoon. But no, it's there, and it was quite a little process. I learned a lot, but no, I never ever thought it's like having a patent. I never thought I'd have a patent for anything. I sure never thought I would be an author of a book. So it's it's
Yeah.
it's a good deal.
Well, so I pre-ordered on Amazon. Is that the only place people can get it?
Nope. So McFarland and Company Books, McFarland Publishing, they're shipping them now. That's how the trooper got his. He ordered directly. So you can get it directly from the company. You can get it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. I'm told New Year's Day it'd be available anywhere, Walmart, wherever. A buddy called me today and said that Amazon's still showing it as a pre-order. So I called the publisher because again, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I called the publisher, a young lady I speak with some frequency, and she said, "No, Amazon's already got their order. They should be shipping, anytime, but they use some kind of algorithm." And sounds very complicated to me, but yeah, no, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Amazon, wherever you buy books, it should be either available now or certainly available for pre-order for delivery here pretty quick.
Well, I'll make sure I put a link down there at the bottom after this show so people can click on it and order it.
That'd
I
be
thought it was a
awesome.
great read what you sent me. I really enjoyed it because it reminded me of a little bit of my career and the things I got to do and the people I got to meet. But it was just, I thought it was really well done, Barry. And the experience that you brought to the FBI, to the American people is just amazing and just amazing opportunity that you were given.
And that's the thing. It's really nothing I did. It was very fortunate and blessed that right place, right time. It sounds strange to say right place, right time because they were all mostly horrible events, but to have a small part in them and to work with the caliber of people such as you is something that most people just don't get to do. And yes, it's that whole, I guess, from accounting to the weapons of mass destruction, and it was a crazy ride, but I enjoyed every minute of it.
So tell us what you're doing now.
I teach at the University of Central Oklahoma. This is the Forensic Science Institute. I teach forensic investigation of mass disasters, which is a lot of basically what we've talked about, and crime scene processing, which is basically our ERT course. And it's a second degree program. So the students are all really pretty highly motivated because they're seeking the degree in forensic science, but also in chemistry or biology, some criminal justice. So they have to have some other degree path plus this. So it's a dual degree. I had again no inkling that I would ever be teaching at a university, but the opportunity presented itself. It's like 8 miles from my house. It did, it's in the backyard, and they said, "Well, you can pick your days." I was like, "How about like Monday, Wednesday, Friday?" Done. So I'm teaching the afternoons. Still time for a little golf or whatever in the mornings. And, it worked out. It worked out quite well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I got the opportunity to sit in on one of your classes, and it was an honor for me to see you talk to the students. And you do a
No,
great job. You're great in front of people, and
well,
to bring
I
that
appreciate.
experience that you have to the table, just it's a lot of value that these students are getting.
Well, thanks, Jay. What's nice is I hear from them periodically. One student asked for a letter of recommendation to go into the Navy, and
Mm.
she emailed me from the Med. She's about to get out and is looking at going in the bureau. So these are relationships, I guess, student, professor or instructor kind of relationships that they're very positive. When people will look you up, 4 years later and even remember who you are, it feels like I'm still trying to give back a little bit.
Well, it's not every day that people get instruction from an icon like you. So
Icon's a strong word, but I appreciate it.
that says a lot about you and just your demeanor and how you I have 2 other questions to ask you, and I'm not trying to make light of anything, but can you tell us about you told me about this story before, and I thought it was really funny, but can you tell us about your car that was at the Oklahoma City building?
So my vehicle, again, it was an Oldsmobile Calais. Now everybody has like an F-250 that's tricked out with plenty of, yeah. Well, I was lucky to even have a car. We didn't even have take home cars in '88 when I started. So this was all a progression. But the day of the bombing, if that's the car you're talking about,
I'm talking about your personal car.
well, yeah. So my wife, she drove an Acura, and as I said, she parked in that garage, the personal car and the government car. She was okay. Her office was damaged, so she was at home. And it was about 3 days after the bombing until there was even an avenue clear enough to remove some of the vehicles because it was multi-level garage, subterranean garage. So I said, hey, I want to be able to get your car out probably tonight. And so there was still no power. So I had my little Bureau D cell flashlight. This was before the mag light days. And I found her car in her assigned parking place, dusty, but not damaged at all. It was about 2 stories down, parked in a corner. So it was a very secure site. Not a scratch on it, a little dust,
Wow. Yeah.
So I drove it out the ramp, the one ramp that was open. And it's late, like midnight, 1 a.m. Was coming home. Oh, Oklahoma's a beautiful state. It's rural, right? So I was on 35, the highway heading north, pitch black, in this car that survived the largest act of domestic terrorism known to the country still. And this giant buck jumped the fence, came through the windshield. So I'm thinking, really? Yeah. Yeah. So
Totaled the car, right?
it destroyed it. I mean, this was a huge deer. And well, that's what insurance is for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not making light of what happened, but
No,
just
it's
that
just
story
these
was
things,
ironic. It's
you can't
funny.
make it up.
It's
I
crazy,
mentioned
right?
the F-250s when we'd started to get in appropriate vehicles. I'd just gotten shipped this very nice Ford F-250 with the covered cabinet in the
Yeah.
back and was down at the Super Bowl in Dallas. And my team was inside. So I backed that response truck right up to the building's edge of the Super Bowl or a Superdome. And it was before the game, and the medic was local. The paramedic was a local tech. He got a radio. People are injured outside. We heard this like thunderous noise. So we go outside, and the when they turned the heaters on, it heated the dome enough to cause all the ice and snow. There'd been a freak storm in Dallas. The ice and snow to slide off, and it crushed my car.
Oh, the truck?
Yeah. Or giant holes in the camper shell, blew out the windshield. Yeah.
Man.
Brand new truck.
How long did it take to get a replacement? Forever?
Well, all I could get done was replace the windshield because I had to drive back after the Super Bowl to Oklahoma.
Oh my gosh.
But I called headquarters and said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this. The brand new truck you just sent me has been kind of destroyed in this avalanche in Dallas, Texas." So yeah, it was on the news. The guys here in the office saw it. They go, "Was that your truck that the ice hit?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah,
People don't understand how hard and difficult it is to get trucks like that as bomb
oh yeah,
techs, and
yeah."
then to have it destroyed shortly after, that's terrible.
It was horrible.
Well, I always end my interviews with one question. We have a wide range of audience ages on here. And so, if you could, what is one piece of advice or one thing that you can share with our audience of how you've won at life?
Well, we're given a lot of opportunities, but you have to take them. You have to be prepared. There's the old saying, luck favors the prepared. So things will come along. Some not so good, others are pretty good, but you have to be prepared to recognize and seize those opportunities. You get one chance at this life on this earth. And usually you'll make of it what you put into it. So, even I'd convicted a guy after the trial. He was heading to prison and he saw me in the hallway and he called me by name, starts walking towards me. And I thought, well, okay, here we go. He stuck out his hand and said, "You've always treated me like a gentleman, and I know you didn't have to do that, and I appreciate it." And I thought that was nice enough. And another time I stepped off the curb at a 7-Eleven on the south side of town. And, you're always situational awareness. You're looking around, and this guy called me by name, rolled down the window of a Red Cross van. And the Red Cross has fed me a lot at some of these disasters.
Yeah,
He
me
goes, "You
too.
don't remember me." I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you're going to have to give me a hint." He goes, "You put me in prison 7 years ago. This is my community service."
Wow.
And I just thought I'd say hello. Good luck with that. Right. So, yeah, there's no need to be nasty, even if you're in an adversarial situation. So people remember good and bad. So it's just better to be remembered as good.
That's great advice, Barry. And you've always been that way with me, and that's how you carry yourself. You were just well known in our community and the top of your game, and represented us really well. And so I wanted to say thank you for jumping on here with me today
My
and
pleasure.
talking to the audience about your career. And I do want to encourage everybody to get your book, Hazardous Devices, Memoir of an FBI Bomb Technician, Accountant, and Sniper. It's a really good read, and I wish you all the success of this book, Barry.
Jay, I appreciate it. Have a great new year, and hope to see you again soon.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Take care.